I want to tell you a story about one of the most brilliant, most audacious crimes ever pulled off. Seriously, it's a scam so wild, it sounds like it was ripped straight from a Hollywood movie script.
Just think about that for a second. How on earth would you even begin to convince someone that you had the authority, the right, to sell something like the Eiffel Tower?
And yeah, here's the kicker, a landmark that you have absolutely no claim to whatsoever.
Now, what if I told you he didn't just do it once?
Yup, in the spring of 1925, a single, incredibly clever con artist didn't just sell Paris's most famous landmark, he actually came back and pulled off the exact same scam a second time.
So who was this guy? Who was the mastermind behind this legendary heist? To really get how this happened, we first have to understand the who.
So, meet Count Victor Lustig. Now, he was born into a pretty regular middle-class family, but he was anything but common. This guy spoke multiple languages fluently and had this almost supernatural ability to read people. He wasn't some petty thief. He was a master manipulator, an aristocrat of crime, who could build a fake reality so convincing you'd believe literally anything he said. And that long list of aliases and arrests, well, that just shows you how busy and how slippery he really was. This quote, wow, it gives us a window right into his mind. For Lustig, this was never just about the money. It was about the thrill of the game. He saw deception as a kind of art form, a cure for the crushing boredom of an honest life. And that mindset, that's the key to understanding the incredible audacity of what he did next. To really wrap your head around this con, you have to picture Paris in 1925. Because Lustig's timing wasn't just good, it was perfect. He found the perfect little crack in reality to slip his light into. We have to remember that back in 1925, the Eiffel Tower was not the beloved icon it is today, not even close. When it was first built, a lot of famous artists and writers, people like Guy de Maupassant, they absolutely despised it. They saw it as this hideous, temporary monster scarring the beautiful Parisian skyline. So one day, Lustig reads a newspaper article about how the tower is basically falling apart. And boom, a light bulb goes off. This is why his lie was so brilliant. It was believable. The tower was never supposed to be permanent anyway. It was visibly rusting, and the upkeep was costing the city a fortune. The local papers were already talking about tearing it down. Lustig didn't have to invent a fantasy out of thin air. He just gave an official voice to a rumor that was already floating around. The idea was one thing, but the execution, well, that was pure genius. Let's break down exactly how he pulled this off step by step. So, Lustig didn't just tell a lie. He built an entire stage play around it. He forged official-looking documents and took on the role of a high-ranking government minister. Then he invites 6 of the biggest scrap metal dealers in the city to this secret meeting at one of Paris's fanciest hotels. He tells them the deal has to be kept quiet to avoid a public outcry. And the whole time, he's just watching them, sizing them up, looking for his perfect target, a guy named André Poisson, who was a little insecure and really desperate to make a big splash in the business world. And this is the absolute masterstroke. Poisson's wife, she was a bit suspicious of the whole thing. So Lustig sets up a private meeting. He confesses that his government salary is, just not enough, and he hints that he might need a little something extra to grease the wheels. For Poisson, this wasn't a red flag at all. It was a green light. In his world, dealing with corrupt officials was just business as usual. The bribe request made the whole crazy scheme feel completely, totally legitimate. So now, Lustig has a suitcase overflowing with cash, and poor Poisson has a completely worthless contract. What happens next is almost as incredible as the con itself. Lustig takes the money, flees to Vienna, and just waits. He's checking the Paris newspapers every single day, expecting to see his face plastered all over them. But there's nothing, not a single word. Why? Because André Poisson was so humiliated, so deeply ashamed to admit that he'd been conned into buying the Eiffel Tower that he never went to the police. Lustig knew his victim's psychology perfectly. He knew that shame would be his greatest shield. Realizing he'd gotten away with it, clean, Lustig does the absolute unthinkable. He goes back to Paris just a month later, rounds up a whole new group of scrap dealers, and runs the exact same con all over again. The audacity is it's breathtaking. But you can only push your luck so far, right? This time, his chosen target got a little suspicious and decided to call the police before any money changed hands. With the authorities finally on his trail, Lustig got out of France for good, and he set sail for America to start the next big chapter of his criminal career. But the Eiffel Tower scam wasn't the end of Victor Lustig's story. Not by a long shot. It was simply his most famous performance, the one that cemented his legacy as a true icon of deception. And get this, he was so disciplined in his craft that he actually wrote down his own rules, his 10 commandments. And when you read them, you can see the entire blueprint for the Eiffel Tower scam. Be a patient listener. That's exactly how he zeroed in on André Poisson. Never boast. He played the part of a humble, underpaid official, not some flashy salesman. These rules aren't just about trickery. They're a masterclass in psychology. It's all about making the target feel comfortable, feeling control, so they never even think to question the world you've built around them. And when you look at his whole life on the timeline, selling the Eiffel Tower was the peak, for sure. But his career spanned decades and continents. He ran a counterfeiting ring in the US so huge it actually threatened the economy. He even managed to con the gangster Al Capone. His incredible run finally came to an end in 1935, and he spent the rest of his life behind bars, eventually dying in Alcatraz. But maybe the most amazing part of this whole story is that the public didn't even know about the Eiffel Tower scam until after Lustig was dead. The story was buried for decades, for one simple reason: the victim was too embarrassed to talk. And when you think about that, it really makes you wonder, if a crime this massive, involving a landmark this famous, could stay completely hidden for that long just because of human shame, well, how many other impossible heists, brilliant cons, and monumental scams are still out there, completely lost to history?